Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Today is Tuesday, February 18th, 2020, 6:30 p.m., and we are having a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. If you join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Randy.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Duran.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, our attorney Roger Zappa. Staff present is Superintendent of Public Works John Kangas is here, and our Fire Chief Dan Shanahan, and the Deputy Clerk Linda Winslow is here also tonight.
Lots of visitors. Okay. Any public comment? Does anybody wish to visit with us before we start? Sure, go ahead. I think the mic's on.
It is.
Right. Name and address, please.
Gary Limswood Jr., 1 Meter Street, Lawrence, Michigan. I'd like to thank you guys for your time. Just wanted to touch base on the cannabis development. I'm sorry we haven't been present at the meetings. Ran into some bureaucracy down in Lansing, and we're just getting that all straightened out. So I spoke with Mr. McCarthy earlier about the planning and the policies. So I think we're in step. Just wanted to make sure that Township was still going through with the development of policies and procedures, and we'd just like to extend our handout to anything we can do to help. We would like to assist if we can. Just want to see this move forward. We see how all of the surrounding communities are moving forward with this in some way or another. I would just like to say that we would like to see the medicinal side of it move forward, not just the recreational side or the adult use. A lot of people consider this a medicine, and we would like to keep that going as well. We don't want to just do the adult use. We would like to see it somewhere in there for patients, some perspective of it as well. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Anybody else wish to address the board before we start? Okay, any board member comment in response to the public comment? Dave?
And you said you talked to Jason and got an update from him on that. Just to let the public know, the Planning Commission is working on this. We've got a draft copy. The definitions are complete. We did a first draft of Article 15, which is the zoning regulations where they can be located in the township, and I think we'll be looking at another draft copy of that at the next Planning Commission meeting. And then right after that, we'll get into Article 16, which is the detailed use regulations, which covers its location, reference to churches and schools and that type of stuff. But I think after that, it's pretty much ready to be presented to the public.
So 30, 60, 90, something like that.
I would put it out probably in the 60-day range.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Randy?
Yeah, Gary, too, the Planning Commission meets twice a month, and it's the off-board week, so it's the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. So, and their stuff's on our website, too, but maybe if you want to stop in, their next meeting would be a week from this Wednesday.
Yeah,
Week from tomorrow, and then maybe they can, as I said, they're working on it right now before it comes, before it be presented to the board level, so probably be better to get it right there than send it up and send it down. And
idea. Okay, anything else? All right, thanks. All right, up tonight and on the consent agenda is approval of the regular meeting minutes of February 4th. Bills payable in the amount of $235,100.83. Committee and other reports tonight include Fire Department Activity Report from January, the Sheriff's Department Activity Report from December 19 and January 20, Planning Commission minutes of January 22nd, financial statement from January, correspondence not requiring board action is fee payment from Charter Communications instead of channels being taken away. Letter from Upset regarding contribution, that's our yearly contribution that they're recognizing and thanking. Emergency management and safe schools resolution. Anything that needs to be pulled out of the consent agenda? Just need a motion then.
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Support.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, go ahead, Ernie.
Okay, and going through the monthly report from our deputies and that, on the retail fraud, on one of them have four of them, the other one has two, but when you go back to their summary, they only got 4 sitting there, so I don't know if they miscounted or what. So there is a difference of 2 sitting here. And the other question I have is, we have a number of business alarms. We have a total of 5. And so which means our deputies have to go there and check it out. So I'm just wondering if it's the same businesses that are coming out each month. If they are, maybe we have to contact them and say after so many, it's gonna start charging in that too, so.
Yeah, I don't think you have the same situation there as you do that we had with the fire department where it was the same repeats. I think these are varied. A lot of the businesses that are going in now have motion detectors, and those motion detectors set off a notice, basically, that they have to follow up on. Sometimes it's people, sometimes it's deer, sometimes it's nothing. But I don't think it's the same businesses all along. I've talked with Deputy Loonsfoot quite a bit about it, and it's varied. It's not the same ones over and over again.
Just going through, I'm looking at, so it's okay, I'll ask the question.
Sure.
Good observation.
Yeah, we're getting more and more activity with the movie theater down there and the other businesses opening up here in this part of the township. So we're getting more activity out here at night, which is setting off some of these motion detectors.
Anything else? Okay. I just need approval of the rest of the agenda unless somebody has something they want to change or,
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. No one's told me about any conflicts of interest with this agenda. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Start with staff reports. We have our fire chief here.
We were going to have, under the Board of Education, we were going to have Jason do the Planning Commission.
Go first, okay.
Oh, he just got,
Well, we had Jason.
he just got snagged.
Well, might as well do the
All
other
right.
first.
He just got rounded up.
All right, come on up, chief.
I can be
He might be a few
real
minutes.
brief. Like I said, you have my report in front of you. Nothing real exciting. The only thing, our EMSs, you'll see, our medical calls actually are going down a little bit, and they have over the past year, percentage-wise. The numbers are going up, but the percentage-wise is coming down. The Quamnon, when we worked that on the 25th, that's a good PR, and it's also nice to get the ambulance, the snowambulance, the sled out in the Argo. We have a good time. It's a long day, but we enjoy it, and it did come in, it has come in, this training does come in handy too, as we did have a rescue out on Trail 14, a couple miles up off of Forestville. Would like to congratulate Assistant Chief Rob Cochran and Captain Mike Gregridge on completing their Company Officer 1 and 2. And the class you approved me to go to, Supervisor Durant, I also did pass that exam, so
Good.
just so you know. The ambulance, I'm sure that's a question for a few, and I'll give you a brief update, and it started a week ago, Monday. We had issues. We had it looked at. The first people we talked to, they didn't think they wanted to look at it. They advised me to some other, I don't want to mention names, but they advised me with another company. And I actually drove out to the company and talked to the gentleman, and he said he would not work on it. And he was highly recommended by quite a few mechanics in the UP. I resorted back to my first contact. Anyway, it's been a work in progress. It's in the shop right now, and I will find out either more tonight or tomorrow morning on where we're at. And I've kept Randy abreast of exactly where we're at. And I'm hoping to have it back tomorrow evening, hoping.
You know for sure if it's a head gasket, or are they still working on the valve?
They're working into it, because we just dropped it off early this morning, and we're hoping, I actually have a meeting with it, we're having a meeting tonight, and he'll be there, and I'm hoping to get an update. So,
I told Randy I figured you kind of felt like an arm was missing now that you've assimilated into that mode of ambulance, and now you don't have it for a few days.
it is a little different.
Kinda
It is. Yep, it is. Everybody feels it. It is different, it is.
Very different.
It is.
It's kind of a scary feeling,
It, yep,
not having it, you know.
yeah.
So we've had a few hospital transports that they've been there, obviously.
Yes, yep, everything's worked out real well.
Everybody's covered. The township's
Everything's been
covered.
covered, yes, and all of our mutual aid is aware. We're keeping them updated on where we're at. They've been busy a few times. It would have been, like last Friday evening when we were up on Sugarloaf, every ambulance in the county was out. But it works out. We have good mutual aid. I really don't.
Sir, go ahead. Oh, Randy?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that, absolutely, that one piece of equipment being out of service makes a whole difference regionally, because we've been backing up the city and the hospital routinely, as well as other communities routinely, and with that one piece of equipment out of service, there was a lot of coordination done last week, notified the state, notified medical control, notified all of our mutual aid partners. And it's worked pretty well. I mean, we've been responding with, with our other trucks that we just can't transport, and we've been coordinating pretty well with that. But we're seeing the same thing we saw before. The reason that we brought the ambulance on is that there just isn't enough coverage without that piece of equipment out here. There's just not. It is working real well. It's short term. If it turns out to be a little bit longer term, we've already looked into some other options to have temporary refill, to acquire a temporary unit to be here. Possibly something that we could look at as maybe even our second piece of equipment. But at any event, those things are all in the works, and we're just waiting to find out what it is. It's either a valve or a head gasket, and we're going the least damage route first with the valve to see if that cures it. And if it has to be a head gasket and it'll be out of service a little bit longer, we'll acquire a temporary ambulance to bring back up here.
I do think it's something that we're gonna have to really think about seriously and look into, updating and possibly obtaining a second unit and then have this as a backup unit. The writing is pretty much on the wall. Nobody wants to work on this. We expected 2 years out of it. We got 2 years out of it, and
Right.
we should start looking into the future.
Yeah, and the issue is this particular engine has a fair notoriety, and we knew it when we acquired it, that it has a fair notoriety for not liking its head gaskets. So it's not a big surprise. We're hoping it's not that at this point. But next week I'll be in Lansing. I'll be driving down Wednesday for a Wednesday night and a Thursday daytime meeting, and then I'll be coming back Thursday night. And one of the places we've been talking to is just outside of Lansing and Grand Ledge that have ambulances on hand, and we may have one of the fire department staff go down with me to take a look at one to bring back possibly next week. So it's in the works.
Yeah, like the manager said, they are expensive though, and we're just getting that money right now too, so, that we put away for that, so. But we have been in contact with that company and looking at ambulances. Does anybody have any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pete.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
On your aerial truck, what's the life of one? We got 26.
Boy, I know. It's a 1994.
Yeah, we got 26 years into that.
Yeah,
I mean, how long do they,
They have to be relicensed, recertified.
recertified after
regularly.
20, and it's in excellent shape. It
Right.
really is. It's probably our best truck mechanically, and the most expensive to replace.
And it is currently certified.
Oh, yes.
And it's not
Yep.
up for recertification for a while yet, but the replacement cost, you remember, we upped our insurance to cover it to be a minimum 1 million on a replacement value should something happen to it. And that's one of the reasons that we established the posture that we took with the .6 mil was to build a fund towards that replacement of one of those equipment, one of those pieces of equipment, whichever one comes up first. So that's the only way we can build a fund to do that is on a millage type basis. And that's where that .6 mil is going.
then your pumper is 21 years old. Who does the repairs on this? Where do you send this one?
We're currently, Marquette DPW has certified Pierce
Okay,
mechanics, yes.
We just made that change within the last year. We were shipping it long distance, basically, or having them come up here, and it was pretty expensive, so we entered an arrangement, an agreement with the city of Marquette for maintenance.
No, I was just looking at how old they are, you know, one's 26 and the pumper's 21 years old and stuff like that, so, all right.
Yep.
Our
They
biggest
could-
ongoing expense is rubber.
Great.
Tires for them, because the tires are regulated as well, and they have to be replaced on a more regular basis than the
10
equipment
years.
does.
Yep. And we maintain them. We maintain, we keep everything up. They're older and they've been well maintained for 26 years.
That's good.
They're in good shape.
Dave had some questions.
The contract we have with the city, they wouldn't work on
They would, I couldn't get a time frame. They would. If we, very good question. And of course, that's where I went first.
you had to know that was coming, right?
Yep, I didn't know how to answer it, but yes, I knew. it was
Well,
coming.
the issue, and realistically, the city is, they're a little bit gun shy with that 6.0 diesel.
Right, they're- right.
It has a reputation, and the amount of resource that they would have to put into it would have cut into their normal use. So that's why they initially weren't interested in the head gasket side. They were gonna replace the valve. I mean, that was not an issue. It was that if it was a head gasket, that would have tied them up too much, basically, to do that particular repair. So it went to a different location, and they're starting with the valve to see, and if it is a head gasket, then we know it'll be out of service for an extended period of time while they're repairing that, and that will bring up a loaner, basically, or a rental, if you will, to cover our needs until it gets back in service.
The city has been helping me with who and how and exactly what needs to be done and what should, They did, but the time frame, and we're on a schedule, this is a piece of equipment that's out of service. We need it done, and we need it done now. And it's a big job, and it would if it's just this EGR cooler, we're talking 2 days labor minimum. So, but then if we get into the head gasket, and then if they have other equipment, we're not their number one priority, which we can appreciate.
Well, with Fox Marquette, with your opening Chevy, they're going towards heavier trucks and that. Would that be any help to us?
That could be in the future.
Yeah.
And it was just this one engine, one piece of equipment that they would do. But I couldn't get a time frame. Now, do we rent that ambulance for, and we know $100 up to $150 a day. Do we rent that for 2 months? And there's a minimum leasing period.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of variables, and we're doing the best we can. That's really what it comes down to.
So it was dropped off today. They're going to do the analytical, and hopefully we'll know tomorrow where we're at or what we're looking at, basically. And then we
You're
can
right.
make some decisions at that point.
Right. And the smaller garages, they're tying up the garage. And they don't know for sure what they're getting into till they dig it apart.
Ernie?
Not a very good answer, but
Listening to everything on the ambulance and this is the first time I heard about it.
yeah.
Listening to what Trustee Everson said and the rest of it said, I think it's time that the staff start making presentation to the board as to the direction to go. far as the future need for an ambulance and that. Time frame and dollar-wise, whatever it's gonna cost is gonna cost, but I think we have to get into a time frame at this point in time where we wanna go and that.
It has started. I'm hoping spring, that we can have something here. Like I said, we just collected the monies. And we have been looking, and they are, the price range that you might be thinking, they have hundreds of thousands of miles on them. We were fortunate with this particular one, it only had 90,000 on it. But now it's that engine, now you're gonna come into these repairs. If you're gonna get away from this engine, this particular, then you're gonna get a lot of miles. So we're looking more, and we'd like to go gas and step it, maybe a demo or something. But then if somebody had, not too many good used ambulances out there, they're keeping them. So they're expensive.
He's preparing you.
Yeah, try and slow, yeah.
Not gonna be a $20,000 unit.
No,
It's a bullet we have to bite.
yep,
We already know it's paying for itself, not
Yep.
only in the advantage to the public,
yep,
but in the financial side of it.
it is.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
And like Randy always said, if we make a buck
Right.
over what it costs us, we're still
Yep.
saving, and we're making much more than a buck.
Right, yep.
So it's still an advantage. Pete, were you first again?
At the MTA, that dealership will be there, not this one, but one of them who's got new and used ambulance and that, they're down there, so maybe talk to them a little bit.
Yeah, Randy's been kind of scouring the website and making calls and getting prices.
They usually have a flyer with a bunch of what year they are and what's on them and stuff like that, so.
Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, Chief and I, for about the last 6 months, have been looking at options, different options, talking to people in various parts of the country. And basically what we've been doing is developing a network of folks that we know we can trust, that have a good reputation. Most of the sources are quite a bit distant. We're lucky that we have two. We have one in Appleton and we have one just outside of Lansing. And the one just outside of Lansing has gotten high recommendations from some of the other chiefs that we know. Basically in terms of quality equipment and having a fairly good assortment, and that's the folks we've been talking with recently, basically, and they've got several on hand right now. We've talked about the possibility of maybe getting involved with something on a lease purchase type of a basis that we could basically have for a period of time, like maybe a year, to evaluate and then determine whether we would want to acquire it or give it back. So we're looking at a number of different options with regard to covering it. But the demand is there, the demand is growing, and it's something we need to really consider, and we need to have more than one, for reliability, so we can alternate, basically, so one doesn't get all the use.
Like we said last year, there was, within an hour or so, we had 4 calls,
Oh, yeah.
back to back to back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They were running all
Yeah.
over.
Well, we've had
Oh, yeah.
we've had situations where we've had the ambulance and both trucks out at the same time
That's-
on multiple calls.
Yeah.
If you've got a car accident that happens, you've got an ambulance there besides regular calls or backup on a fire or whatever. So I mean, it's happening more and more often in terms of having back-to-back calls. Well, Friday was back-to-back, within minutes. One was down here on this end, and the other one was at Sugarloaf. So, I mean, you got a fair distance between the two, so those happen fairly regularly.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
On.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we should have changed the agenda, but that's okay.
It works.
Last week, we've had a couple meetings about trying to fill the planning position, as we had one of our commissioners retired from her position, and I was talking to the guys, trying to figure out what to do. I've made some calls, some people haven't called me back. So I said to Randy the other day, I said, can Jason come up and kind of just explain to the public what the planning commission does, why it's important, what they try to accomplish? And he said, yeah, why don't I have him put something together? and you did a great job.
Slide.
Your thing is there.
I'll go past this slide because it still says Wednesday on it.
So take it away.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's getting to that time in the season where the planning commission's going to be busy. And I know that, time is a commodity for all of us these days, but we do need to fill a seat on the planning commission. And then I feel, as the planner and zoning administrator for the community, that the planning commission is probably one of the more exciting billets you can hold as a volunteer for a community. In that, besides staff, typically the planning commissioners are the ones that are reviewing plans for new developments and working on zoning text amendments for various issues that come up. But we'll start with what is, a planning commission. And as the name implies, the mission of the planning commission is to act as the principal planning policy and program development for the township board on long and short-range issues affecting economic, social, and physical development of the community. The Michigan Planning Act and the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act are the two pieces of legislation that, one, allows a planning commission to exist, and then two, gives us the ability to create. You can go to the next slide, please.
Actually, Jason, you can control it. I got the
Thanks.
the presenter there.
It allows the planning commission to develop things like the master plan. We review sand and gravel extraction permits, although those are kind of boring. All planning reports and plans before publication. That would include site plan reviews, conditional use permits, or special use permits, any zoning text amendments that come through. And those are prepared these ones here are specific to the planning commission and don't need any further acknowledgement from the board. But the board does advise and oftentimes gives the planning commission tasks such as working on a proposed medical and adult use marijuana ordinance. But we've also addressed other things such as the design standards for new construction in the community, especially the general business and development districts. That was a big win for, in my view anyway, of having higher quality developments come into the community that look nice and perform on the long term. So the following matters shall be presented for a recommendation to the Township Board by the Planning Commission. Any amendments to the zoning ordinance, subdivisions as they come through, the capital improvement program, hopefully we get back on track with that this year. Selection of consultants for certain projects. We haven't used much of that lately. And other matters that the Township Board deems necessary. So essentially, we work on the physical land use of the communities. And you've got, this is our high-density commercial area. I mean, we've got 54 square miles, but a lot of the concentration of commercial development is obviously occurring along the corridor, and we have about roughly 100 to 120 acres left that is zoned for that. So we want to make sure that we do land use planning in a sustainable way that utilizes existing utility routes and other things of that nature. I guess the most important component of a planning commission is that every 5 years the state requires us to put out a master plan. Master plan includes all kinds of things like economic development, housing, demographics. This year we're going to have the 2020 census, which last year, or the last time the census was done, I think we increased by about 400 residents, and I suspect that will increase in residents again. You review developments that on paper or on a digital file, and all of a sudden they're constructed and they affect the township greatly, and hopefully in a very positive way. So this is the Lowe's and TJ Maxx site, and this is the Meyer development under construction. Excuse me, there's a lot of recreation planning that happens that the planning commission ends up, ratifying in the master plan. So we have a transportation plan that's separate from the master plan, although it's a component of it, and we have a recreation plan. So all of these things take time to vet out, get public input on, and the planning commission plays a huge role in that. So I always think of the planning commission member as a kind of on the cutting edge of things that are going on in the community. The township board ultimately has a lot of the say in the final documents or policies that are created, but a lot of the grunt work is done at the planning commission level through education and research by staff, presentation by staff. And I really enjoy working with planning commissioners because there's always a learning curve. You don't have to have any experience necessarily to come be a planning commissioner. All you have to do is have an interest in it. And so we're hoping with the recording tonight and with the media being here, perhaps we can drum up somebody that wants to step forward before the busy development season hits us and get that spot filled. Of course, it's helpful if that particular individual has an interest in a particular field, whether that be recreation or business or real estate. A lot of those, if they are of that background, it often provides them kind of a jump start on understanding different land use policies. But you can see here, this is the Schwemmwood Park plan, and that was worked through the Planning Commission via the Recreation Committee. And a lot of this stuff, this started out as a conceptual plan that was agreed upon, a common vision was established, and then after a while, a lot of this project is done already. In fact, the majority of it, the last component would be potentially installing a restroom facility, but that can be done in a phased approach over time. And of course, you got access management. That's something that we work on in a zoning ordinance, but basically you're looking there at making sure that with the busy corridor that we have proper spacing of driveways. And so all of these things are all things that the Planning Commission reviews over a period of time or over the course of their tenure as a planning commissioner. So it is a paid position. It's not a whole lot, but it typically covers an hour or two of your time to be here. And in my view, it's just an exciting government body to be a part of. So if there's anybody out there, I know we've advertised on Facebook, we've advertised in the newspaper, and again, we know time is a commodity, but if somebody would like to serve, please contact either myself or Andrea at the front office, and we can get those applications filled out and get them to the supervisor so that she can review them and potentially have a candidate ready for us, hopefully sometime in March, if not sooner. But that's all I had. I just wanted to give a brief overview on what we do, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So it's a 3-year term.
Yes.
There are 5 members on the commission. We try to have them a little bit of a balance. Right now, we have someone who's interested in trails. We have another one who has a business background. We have another one who has a building background. And it'd be nice to have like a banker or a abstract or somebody with some real estate experience. This is a supervisor recommended board approved position. So the applications come through, we do a little bit of vetting. I always do an interview for any of my appointments, make sure what the people are hoping to get is what we're providing, all the different, committees that we have. And as Jason said, some of the actions that the Planning Commission take are of their own. Some of them come back to the board for approval. And they are also one of our committees. So our committees do tasks. We might, in this case, we tasked the commission to do something on the marijuana ordinances, which is part of our ordinances and their job anyway. But from time to time, we'll have the commission look at different aspects of things that we're considering. So it is, like Jason says, a very important, vital arm of the township. While it can be standalone, it does work in conjunction with us. So it is fun. When I was a trustee, that was one of the things I wanted to do, was be the liaison, because it was very interesting, very intricate, lots of ordinances to remember, and you don't have to memorize them by any means, but it's being part of the new development in the community, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And getting to see that stuff.
As a planning commissioner, you'll always have your pulse on, or your thumb on the pulse of what's going on, for sure.
Randy, what do you want to share?
Well, just to dovetail on what you said, it's a 3-year appointment, basically, and the Planning Commission meets twice a month, the second and fourth Wednesday of each month, usually for a couple of hours, basically at a meeting. But the whole point of the membership, the idea behind the Planning Commission is that it brings together a mix of different backgrounds to apply interest and experience and professional expertise to the various issues that the Planning Commission are dealing with, to try and vet out from all different aspects the impact of a potential ordinance. And a lot of people have questions about why we have an ordinance that says you can't do this. Well, the Planning Commission has to address those kinds of questions from the biggest fit for the majority of the population, and sometimes it pinches on some folks and sometimes it doesn't. But that's the whole point of the ordinance, is to control how the township looks, how it develops, and to enhance the sense of community and the way the township grows and looks, basically. So it's an important, one of the more important appointments that the board does, that and the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Any questions for Jason? Or? Appreciate your work.
Not a problem.
This is
Thank you.
a tough position to fill, and it was nice having that backup. Then we can play this if anybody wants to review it, see what's involved. Yes. Thanks, Stace.
Yes.
Okay, now we could shift backwards again and go back to John, who's patiently waiting for Public Works.
Maybe I can segue the last two presentations. Just real briefly, for those that are thinking about this, I did serve briefly on the Planning Commission in Chocolate, and I would say it's a very rewarding experience, so just thought I'd throw that out there. Getting back to the equipment, I'm sure everyone's wondering when this new loader is coming. We are about 2 weeks out on the loader. All of the attachments are in the Miller Bradford store in Agani. So that puts us about 6 weeks total from when we ordered it, and that's usually about your delivery time. I think we were hoping to have it all by now, but St. Patty's Day is kind of our new goal for the loader delivery. Our backhoe, on the other hand, we had that inspected front to back a couple of weeks ago. Came back pretty good. We did have some fluids we had to get changed out. That's all been done. We had a very good bill of health report on it. They think we can get another 10, 15 years out of it. So that's looking really good. So there's some good news for you. The only other thing I had to report on tonight is the formation of the Marquette County Water Coalition, which is a focus group of the Marquette County 2040 master plan process. I will be serving as I guess you could say one of two Marquette Township representatives on that coalition, primarily for my water background. But Ryan Diedrichson, our staff planner, will also be serving on that focus group as a Marquette County Planning Commissioner representative. So Marquette Township has two voices. It'll be comprised primarily of 13 members of county municipalities, and the goal is to gather and evaluate baseline data of water resources in the county for that 2040 master plan. And of course, the water resources are surface waters, Lake Superior, coastal waters and shoreline, stormwater, sewage and wastewater, drinking water, and utility infrastructure, aquifers and wells. So anything you can think of that has to do with water, we're going to be talking about it and gathering the data and helping the county prepare the reports necessary to get that 2040 master plan completed from a water perspective. There is one other thing that I am working on, and that is getting contracts to you for the engineering work related to our Northwoods water storage tank painting for this year. Nelson Engineering and Nelson Tank and Engineering, I guess, and Tech, has been handling our water tanks here for quite a while. They are one of 3 organizations I'm aware of that specializes in this kind of work, and probably the one that I would recommend we continue working with moving forward. So hopefully, the agreements or the proposals they submitted to us meet our legal expectations, and then we can get that to you sometime in March for approval. So that way the bidding can get out to the contractors and they can get it painted during our short painting season. That's primarily what's going on right now in Public Works. Any questions?
Go ahead, Ernie. All right, you already had your hand up. Go ahead.
Just on the backhoe, is it still doing the job, or should we consider a bigger one or that?
I think for what we need to use it for, it's probably the best way forward for now. Would it be nice to have a wheeled excavator at some point in time? Maybe, but I don't think we're there yet. If we were having water main breaks on a daily and or weekly basis, maybe we would want something a little bit beefier than what we have, but our water system is fairly new. All ductile iron or HDPE, so it's a pretty good system. The amount of breaks that we have, I don't know that I'd recommend changing that equipment right now.
Dave, I think you were.
Yeah, we've been, just to keep it on your radar, I know you've only been in position here for, what, about a month and a half, is those asset management reports. I believe the water's already done and submitted to Eagle.
Correct.
Yeah.
The water asset management plan has been submitted and approved. The sewer asset management plan was submitted and deemed administratively complete. We don't know if they've fully accepted it yet or if they go beyond that.
I guess what I'm curious to see is some kind of a summary, and I think it's important for planning. That's the whole reason we put that together, is when are we going to have to start replacing in-ground infrastructure, and what's the projected costs? And I think that's all what this asset management program does, so we can start putting money together for that, so that we don't have to borrow a ton of money to get these projects done. I think that was the whole purpose for starting down the asset management road. I'm just wondering when we think we might get some kind of a summary report on that.
Well, we've been wanting to do that since they were both submitted actually to Eagle. I want to make sure that Eagle accepts the wastewater plan before we get too excited about it. But I think I could probably present the water asset management plan to you next month.
Yeah, I guess what I'm curious about with that is how long before we have to look forward to replacing our first infrastructure? Are we
There's
talking
nothing critical that I
20 years
can.
down the road, or?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of what the board's priorities end up becoming, because part of the CIP that comes from the asset management plan does include the expansion of our source water, which has been discussed here before my time. How far into the future that ends up being, I guess, really depends on
And I
a
guess
lot
I
of
see that as
factors.
two separate issues. The
Yeah.
issue of replacement is one issue that should be saved for, separate from the issue of expansion. Expansion should be done as needed or as our residents demand, but the replacement, we're just gonna have to do that and we gotta be ready for it. So I see that as two separate issues, so.
They are, but from a management perspective, we have to figure out how to pay for everything, right? So it's a matter of categorizing things in the end and figuring out where the money's coming from.
Well, one thing I would hope this asset management program would give us the ability to do is to have money earmarked for replacement instead of saving it in one fund and then borrowing our replacement money to do improvement money, and keep the two separate so that when it comes time to replace, we're not out borrowing 2 and 3% money in the tunes of $3 or $4 million to do it.
Sure. Yeah, that's the pretty typical way of doing things with municipal infrastructure, right? You realize you have a big project and the only way to fund it is to go after grant and loan money, and the loan money is becoming more and more scarce, so.
Well, and I think if you have to go out and borrow money to do improvements, that's one thing based on need and what the residents want, but I think it's a bad practice to have to go out and borrow money to do replacements.
I agree.
Because we should have planned for that a long time ago.
And I will be happy to say that Marquette Township is in the best position I've seen in the places I've been as far as having money waiting for that rainy day, so to speak. So it's not that we're overcharging our customers, it's that the plan is much stronger than many other places I've been. So.
Well, the other end of this picture is we don't want to be putting money away for an improvement project and have to take that money and use it for a replacement project because there wasn't any planning done there.
I agree.
So I think it's really important. I guess I'm getting a little impatient to see some kind of a summary on that asset management so that we can get some kind of a picture of how much money we need to be putting away over the next 15, 20 years to be ready for that replacement.
Sure. One of the things, that, since we're talking about it, you may recall that Stantec worked with us on the wastewater asset management plan. They have a, let's call it proprietary system they set up based on how each individual item in the system is aged, its criticality, all those, the level of service requirements. And their proprietary algorithms actually kick out at the end what you have to plan for. What we did in-house is almost rudimentary compared to that. And we've been thinking about, before Kirk left, what the value would be of having all the data that we've already collected and verified to an extent its accuracy, having that put into the same type of algorithm to see if it kicks out something significantly different than what we came up with. So it's a matter of determining what that cost would be to have them do that. Probably something I can move back to the front burner.
Because it would be kind of imbalanced, wouldn't it, to have one system based on an algorithm and the other not? I mean.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got your own, but
right.
to have them be equal would make more sense.
Yeah, it's a matter of to what degree you want to take each system, and if they're both taken to the same level, then it's apples to apples, as opposed to maybe sour grapes or something.
So what can you do anything with Eagle and kind of get them to confirm and get us to the point where they're both done and approved?
I
Just
can
have to
check
wait.
with them to find out how far they're going to take this. Are they going to take it past administratively complete to a accepted or rejected with comments type of situation? I would have to assume that because it was related to a specific grant and 20% of the grant money they had total was released each of 5 years, they're probably a little bit backed up in reviewing these things. So eventually I would expect to hear something from them, but I can find out for sure.
Randy, you had something?
Yeah, it's just a couple of things. I would suspect they're pretty backed up because they're all getting flooded with submittals, basically. I understand where Dave's coming from. Yes, we can put together a preliminary, information on the asset plan about timing. I mean, we know we're about 28 years out on the oldest pipe that's in the ground. I think, from the time using a 75-year lifespan, we're about 28 years out on the oldest pipe. A couple of the other things. So, I mean, you know, John can get a handle on that, but we're kind of at the mercy of the state right now on the wastewater side of it in terms of how fast they're gonna move on it. The water, I think we can give you a snapshot of that basically almost now that's been approved. The things I was gonna touch on in addition to what John talked about is we are on the new schedule now. That's been completed. We did have internal movement to fill the service worker positions, so I now have a vacant building and grounds caretaker position that we're in the process of filling. Is that all filtered down step after step after step, and then we'll be back to full staff. Right now we have the one building and grounds caretaker that moved to the service worker position is kind of doing double duty because we have one out ill. We're getting hit with that flu that's going around. We've got three people impacted by it right now that are not here. They're all quarantined to their homes from our standpoint. But at any event, that is working very well. So we're on that schedule, and it is working. We should be back to full staff within probably the next 2 weeks in terms of having the building and ground side of it filled as well. So.
Pete?
John, a minute ago, you made a comment about, you work for different water, cities and townships and that dealt with water and sewer, and this Marquette Township is in pretty good shape. We always get questioned, why do you charge this and why do you charge that? And I think you made it one of the best statements that we can hear from someone who's come in and looked at it and seen it. The reasons why, because if you don't plan for it, you have a problem, you gotta go borrow the money at a higher rate than how we're planning for it. So I think that remark, sort of people who are listening to it, I sort of hope it sinks in that we are doing the right thing over all these years. So, thank you.
It's definitely being much more proactive here than in many other places I've been. And I incorrectly stated that loan money is getting harder and harder to come by. It's grant money that's difficult to get. The loan money is always going to be there under the current system.
At what rate?
Right.
Ernie?
I think going back to part of what Dave said is that as far as dollar-wise and that, remember, we're taking the paid-off funds or paid-off projects and transferring them over to the next project, try and pay them down as fast as we can so we do have dollars available if something does come up. We don't have to borrow a tremendous amount of money. We have some money available to us.
Dave?
As long as I'm nagging you about things. We're about 15 years old on our master plan. Is there any look ahead to that to see when we're going to take another look at that and update it to what we're actually looking for?
I think that's part of what I've been doing since I walked in the door is trying to get a good handle on what we have here and where we need to go. Obviously, it's not all my decision to make, but I can certainly make recommendations. We have a 2013 reliability study that was done that recommends upgrading certain of our water mains to increase size to improve fire protection services. That needs to be taken into account. There's a whole list of things that we need to look at one at a time to determine what our priorities should be. The good news is, with all that ductile iron pipe in the ground, our water system is in good shape as it currently sits. There's just things that we should be considering to make it better.
You need a work session with us to help your prioritization. We can do that too, not to tell you what to do, but some of that stuff always ends up getting saved for the budget, and then the meetings are so long. But if you can see where we're coming from, you'll know where we're gonna go, I guess, if that helps.
I know I'd love to hear the board's perspective on the expansion of our source water.
We've talked about it a few times.
Right. I mean, there's certainly a lot of difficult decisions like that to make, and it's a matter of determining when's the right decision to bite that bullet. So.
I think where my question was coming from on that is there's a lot of things in the master plan that we're currently squirreling money away for that really haven't been approved by the board other than in the master plan. And in fact, they've been not approved by the board specifically in a couple instances, but we still save money for them because they're in the master plan. That suggests that it might be time to update the master plan, and if we're not going to proceed with those, then we need to get them out of there.
Sure. Or at least agree to disagree on whether or not they should be a priority, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Randy, once more? Or?
Yeah, just the last comment is, the adoption of the asset management plans basically is going to go a long way to starting to address the future master plan in terms of where it goes. And yeah, it's time to update it. It's supposed to be a rolling 25-year master plan. It's not supposed to be, okay, we adopted it for 25 years, now we won't touch it. Because everything changes. 15 years ago, using Dave's figure, 15 years ago when that master plan was developed, it anticipated development in certain areas that the development didn't occur in. It occurred in other areas. So that shifted your look in terms of securing your own water supply and a variety of things such as that. So yeah, it should be something, that master plan should be a review as part of the asset management plan every year on a rolling basis, basically to amend to what you're actually seeing. And you're going to see the census is going to impact it. Where's your population growing? Where's it at? What's the age brackets? So those things are going to drive what's going on. Is development going to occur up 492 rather than along US 41 like was projected in the 25-year master plan? Those are the things that you as a governing body need to look at that master plan on an annual basis and say, well, it's not really going the way we thought it would last year. So yeah, the 40 acres over here isn't being developed for a hospital, it's being developed for housing. Now we need to do something different. So it's that kind of look that you need to take as part of your CIP, as part of your asset management plan and your long-range master plan. So it should be an annual look once we get to the point of having the data, which we don't have right
I think if you
now.
looked at that every 5 years with an eye toward amending that would be about on schedule and keep you up to date. 10
It's
years
what-
closer than we are.
It's what we do with our master plans, our recreation plans. I mean,
5-year basis.
yeah.
Well, I've been thinking about, we need to meet with the planning commission too, and that would help some of that discussion. We should be meeting with them minimum once a year.
I agree.
And that's on my list of things to try to tackle this year too. It's already February. We're kind of missing that, so I'm pushing the strategic agendas too and try to get that organized, but
The more voices that are heard, the better the plan will be.
anything else? We can move on. Thanks, John.
Yep.
Good report. Having a question, were we hearing anything from Lost Creek?
Very silent. We've had some discussion about where that's going to go now, and it's basically back in our ballpark now. And the last conversation that I had with our assessor was, go get them. And I think, I don't know if.
We can
she
segue
contacted-
from that
been in
right into
contact with you yet about
Rogers.
Lost Creek?
Not recently. I issued kind of a summation of what the options are about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, and so that's being followed up on. We're taking the steps to do what we said we were going to do if they fail to respond. The other thing is that we're right now doing personal property, getting that up. The final submittals have to be done, I think, by the 25th of this month, I think it is, next week, basically. So both Dulcie and Janelle are working diligently on getting those figures submitted into the county and getting our roll finalized.
Okay, Dave?
Yeah, I had that on my a note here to talk about it, and I would just wonder where we, if you could give me a quick review on what the differences are there. It seems to me we're just talking about percentages for the different types of income.
Well, the issue is what they're paying. And Treasurer Johnson might want to dovetail in, or Roger, on this basically. But what it amounts to is there is a contract and there is a formula, and it's based upon their percentage of residents that are above a certain level of income. It's a fixed. And if they're not at that level, then their fee structure is different. We've had them at a level that we don't think is accurate. We've raised that with them. They've promised numerous times to provide us with appraisals and a variety of things to support their position, and they never do. So we're simply going to take the position that we're right, that our calculations are correct, and that's what they're going to get charged.
Well, I guess that one of my concerns is I assume then that they're not paying what we believe is their rightful amount?
Correct.
And
And they haven't been.
it just seems to me we're sitting here leaving the residents holding the bag on that because somebody's subsidizing that money we're not getting.
Well, Roger can probably, like I said, we
Yeah,
can
there's some legal,
segue
there's some
into
legal
his
issues
report.
with that, but
Yep, he's been working on it, and they've had some meetings where you can give us an update on that, please.
Well, basically, the way the payment in lieu of taxes works is you had an ordinance that was adopted in 1998, and you're stuck with it for a number of years in terms of what the ordinance provides. However, within the ordinance and the enabling legislation, for those portions of the project that are not rented to people who qualify for low-income housing from a budgetary standpoint, their units would be taxed at a higher rate, roughly equivalent to what they would be taxed at if they were not low-income housing, just at the fair market value rate under the General Tax Act. And the assessor has sent out bills for that differential. We have our estimate of what that should be. However, when meetings have occurred, and I haven't been a party to those meetings typically, but it's my general understanding that there have been discussions as to what that value is, and there has been a promise for an exchange of information. We've shared what our perception of what that value is. They have disagreed with that, and they've promised to provide some counter information that has never been forthcoming, essentially. But there have been bills sent that have not been paid. It is not per se a tax bill because it is still a payment under the payment in lieu of taxes. It's a service charge, essentially.
so those have accrued. And where we're at now is simply moving forward.
Well, it just seems to me that if this was a residence out there that didn't agree with his tax bill and just sent you what he thought it should be, what would our reaction to that be?
Well, you have a
Well,
difference here
this
because
is
there's an
different.
I understand that.
specific ordinance that lays out.
I understand
parameters.
that,
So we have
but
to live
we
by
are
the ordinance.
essentially sending them a bill and they don't agree with it, so they're not sending us the money for that bill.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that with,
Essentially, there's no money coming in, right?
there's money coming in, but it's not the amount that we think it should be.
It's the differential
predicated on.
that's not
Right.
coming in, because the 4% under the PILT agreement is coming in on all units.
It's just.
It's the
rest of them.
differential on
Right.
those that
understand
we
that.
believe are occupied by other than low-income
Well,
housing.
as I recall it,
people.
when they were here on November or December for a meeting, they said they were gonna have all this ironed out and all the information to us by the end of the year.
Right.
It's well past the end of the year. I think it's way past time for this board to take some action if we have to do something with the ordinance, and we have to do something with the ordinance.
You don't have much option to do anything with the ordinance because you locked yourselves in 1998. That is not, however, I have laid out in writing what the other options are in detail.
Be interesting to see those so that we could take some action.
Where do I send mine in?
Ernie, do you want to add your 2 cents?
Pretty well covered everything. I'm sat here as a treasurer, I'm kind of, don't know which direction to go. It's kind of to the
Gonna
point
end
where
up
there isn't a lot I can do. The next step is almost going to court.
Well, and that's it, and that is our next step, is to go to court, and we're trying to avoid that expense, because that will be expensive. So, where we're at right now is, the assessor is implementing and is initiating collection activity, basically.
If we go to
They
court
failed.
and we win, do they have to pay our cost,
And
expense?
then the judge.
Generally, no.
Yeah, generally.
I don't wanna hear that.
Need that. It's fairly rare when you get your
Expenses.
expenses.
The biggest thing that Dawson and I have talked about a lot, and we've communicated with Roger too. We go to court, we got legal expenses and everything else, then when you look at our percent of the dollars that come in, will not cover any of those costs when you come down to it, because
But you can't worry about that, though.
I know we can't worry about it, but you get to the point, where do you want to go? And at that point in time, too.
Could I make a
Yes.
suggestion?
Go ahead.
Before we delve into this too much, there is a written opinion, and it may be appropriate for one of your future agendas to address the clarification of that opinion in, other than an open session.
Yes.
Under the attorney-client privilege. For the same reasons you do occasionally in terms of collective bargaining agreements and other discussions of a similar nature.
Suggestion
But the opinion is out there, the options are laid out, the board will have to decide which route of several, well, of a couple, it wants to pursue, and that would be your next step.
One last question, just for clarification.
Go ahead.
Are they not supposed to submit a report annually for the percentages and the differences?
Well, regardless of whether we're supposed to, we have, the assessor has a calculation in terms of which units are occupied by what level, what income level of residents. So that information is accessible to us.
I guess I was just referring to that, the agreement that we just did for the other Whetstone.
Similar.
Wasn't that in there, that there's a reporting requirement for the percentages?
All I'm saying is we have that information. Whether it's in that specific agreement, I don't know, but we have it. So regardless of whether it's required, we have the information.
And that's what we've been basing our position with them on, is the information that we've compiled. But I think it would be wise to put it on your March 3rd as a closed session.
You want to finish your report, Roger? While you have the floor?
Well, a large portion since I reported last month has been spent with manager replacement issues. I think that sums up a broad category of things where I've spent a considerable amount of time. We also spent a fair amount of time, the clerk gets FOIA requests and responds to those requests regularly without my input. We had a particularly complex and detailed one in the last couple weeks that we've spent quite a bit of time with, where I actually had to meet with a couple of board members on and draft some responses and sort through some documents and so forth to determine which are responsive and from a legal standpoint. So we spent a fair number of hours addressing that. We took a very brief look at a proposal to buy our income stream on one of the cell towers. Those typically do not warrant too much of a second look. And we've already talked about the Lost Creek. I can also segue from the Public Works report that I was looking at the Nelson tank and engineering consulting contracts as recently as this afternoon, and I should be done with those either tomorrow or the next day in terms of moving forward with the monitoring of the Northwoods tank. And that, aside from some other kind of routine things that come up every month, that sums up the things that are a little bit out of the usual routine.
Any questions for the attorney? Thanks. Okay. 7:30. Community linkage is up. That's where we moved Jason's, that's where I had Jason's presentation, we moved that up. I want to just mention something quickly. If you remember, a few years ago, I was talking about, we had an upcoming election and a ballot to consider, and I mentioned to the public to check their tax statements and be aware of what they're supporting with their tax millages, whether it's the senior center or county dispatch or the Heritage Trail or the library. There's all of these county millages and local millages that you're paying for as a taxpayer, and be aware of them. And I was telling my daughter this, and she said, "Mom, I don't get my tax bill. It goes right through with my mortgage payment." And everybody kind of did that aha moment. But that information is available to you. You need to know that the township collects 35.25 mills off of you for various things. Some of them are exempt. If you have a home exemption, you're not going to pay that much. As a commercial owner, property owner, I have to pay that. And of those 35.25 mills that we collect, the township only gets 10.16. And that's for our road and the actual 4.88 mills, fire, law enforcement, 2 for the fire. And we've got a lot of stuff coming up in the ballot this year, whether it's presidential or not. And I don't know how many of these are going to be asked to be renewed or increased. The Headley rollback reduces some of the amounts. If you have a mill for the fire department, let's say, when the Headley rollback comes in, it might go down to 0.9 something. And some communities, and we may do this too, will ask that that be renewed at the 1 mill again. So there's a lot of moving parts in your tax bill, and you need to get a copy of it and look at it and see if you support, if you want to do renewal on the aging or the county dispatch or rescue or the ISD. The school's got 5 different millages on here that I pay as a commercial property owner. If that's important to you, if the Heritage Trail is important and the library, you need to look at those and be aware when you go to that voter's box. I don't care how you vote, I just want you to vote. And I think it's just part of being an educated voter. And I just wanted to point that out to everybody. Committee updates, yes. John, did you want to add something?
Just a spin-off on that. I thought that worked very well last time it was out there. It worked well for people who did get their tax bill and could look at it. And I think it did bring a lot of people, made them alert of what was going on. But your point is well taken. For anybody that does it on a mortgage, they never see it. It just goes to the bank. Maybe we should be thinking about, is there some way that the township could provide information to our citizens and say, if that is the way that your tax bill is routed, really, to your bank, perhaps we could aid them in how to ask their bank for a copy.
Well, they can call here.
Pardon?
They can call the office and get a copy.
Well,
That's why I was kind of started with, is we can help, we can give it to
but
them.
we should be doing more to aid them in how to get a copy, whether it's here or at their bank or whatever.
That's why I brought it up.
That's right.
I want them to call us.
I don't think it's enough to bring it up and then let it go. We have to go a little further. And I compliment you for bringing it up, but I think we should do what we can to assist people or encourage them to follow it. And I think we could do that in a communication that says, you need just what you've expressed.
Mm-hmm.
You need to know what this is because it's your money. And we don't have it all, and we don't control it all, but you could help by being knowledgeable.
We can put it in
So
the
I think
utility billing.
something should be in the mill to encourage citizens to do a little more, or encourage them where to go to get it, or how to get it.
You would think that would be part of the bank's responsibility once they get it, but, hello.
No, but we could do that. We could put, the census has taken a lot of our utility bill page, you know, we've had to do that frequently, but we could put just a little blurb in there and
Sure.
says something like that. Okay. All right, committee updates, please. Dave and Pete.
Yeah. The Planning Commission, February 12th Planning Commission meeting. We pretty much talked about it when Jason was in here. First, the commission reviewed recommendations from the newly formed Marquette County Advisory Committee requesting support for their grant applications. That's a agenda item further down, it's 9B. And then the marijuana text amendment, we pretty well covered that. We're working on principal uses permitted in districts right now, and the last part of that will be Article 16, detailed use regulations. The road committee, we sent the recommendation to the manager, and it'll be up to him to bring that to the board for as far as the maintenance for 2020. And the rec committee was tonight, and that'll be reported at the next board meeting.
Did talk, if I might add, he did go over the Senate Bill 431, as we talked about at the last meeting, about the mining and gravel, sand and gravel mining. And I think I told you, but I'm not sure, the memo that Jason typed up and presented to us in the last packet, I did forward that to Senators Peters and McBroom, and I also sent it to MTA and let them know what our stance was. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. What else have you got? Pete, anything?
Well, Randy covered very well in his report, but I just want to, this coming Thursday at the Westwood Mall, we have the music in the mall. We have craft, we got food distributors, and so that seems to be catching on pretty good. Also, the schedule for this is coming summer, and we hope it comes pretty soon. We'll be on June 20th, we're going to have the car show in the Westwood parking lot. August 1st, we got community days in our Lions Field. And then November 24th, we'll have the Christmas tree lighting in Santa and stuff like that. And usually we have some kind of a hockey game, but it all depends on the ice. A softball tournament we're talking about. And then we got John's favorite, the pickleball tournament. We're trying to talk about that. So, I mean, that's some of the things that we should get on the people's residents' radar and just get those dates out there.
What was the community days date again?
August 1st.
What is the first
Saturday.
day?
That's a Saturday.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
earlier then, okay.
Yeah.
June 20th on the car show. Those are the important ones because they're coming up fast. Okay. We, anything else along that line?
Right, I don't know.
The county list isn't on here for committee updates, but Randy and I did meet with our two representatives. We always seem to have a discussion about the tax tribunal. I'm not going to go into that. Everybody's heard that before, but we did cover it a little bit. Everybody's kind of watching to see what's going to happen in Lansing the next time they talk about it. They did give us a couple documents that have gone through the county board. One of them was about 9 counties that voted to become Second Amendment sanctuary counties, and that was addressed by the Marquette County Board and kind of put at bay for right now anyway. They are not going to become a Second Amendment sanctuary county, which involves firearms, the firearms laws. The other thing that they talked about, these are the two main, was the homeless task force that has been meeting. They've had a couple meetings already, and they're gonna meet again in February on the 28th. And they're trying to figure out basically the best resources and the best way to handle all of the homeless people. They have a lot of statistics on how many are in the community that are local and how many are not. And I know people have argued whether those numbers are right. They had 6 different points. Affordable housing and how there is such a lack of it. Landlords don't want to take MISHDA vouchers. We don't have a 24/7 emergency homeless shelter. And the warming center is going to be, I know they had asked the city for rezoning to be able to do a $150,000 improvement to have more beds put upstairs. And I guess the rest of the time they're sleeping on mats on the floor, which is kind of funny because I can't do that as a hotel. I'm not allowed to do that. Public transit, they said, was inadequate, and they need to have the buses running past 6 p.m. And they need permanent sheltered bus stops. They have homeless people with criminal records that are having troubles being able to rent property. And then you have the single parents that are trying to figure out where they're gonna live, and they can't go to the shelter. So it is quite a big issue. If you're interested, again, the meeting's on the 28th, county. So that's pretty much, unless Randy, if you remember something else that we talked about.
Discussion about the proposed spaceport that I see today. The Marquette County was not selected for the horizontal launch.
Okay.
It's going to Oscoda, the old Wordsmith Air Force Base down there, and they still have not made a decision on the vertical launch.
That's a good update.
Ben?
Sure.
Who's making those comments about public transit and stuff like that? Where is that coming from?
That is that, you can
Homeless.
have this.
The homeless
It's
coalition.
this, yeah, basically, it's a homeless task force.
Do I have a
Doesn't
copy of that
say,
for you?
yeah, you can have this one. Just give it back to me when you're finished.
I'm
It
just
doesn't say
saying we
who
talked
it's
a lot about that.
composed of.
Those shelters, about $15,000, and the city's not interested in putting any up. No, it's not the transit authority, so.
I knew that would pique your interest when I mentioned it, but it is.
Well,
one of the-
you hear that, and you attend meetings and that, and, you know, they say they want this and that, but they don't plan for it either. They want, you know, go all over, but where do you stop a bus? You know,
Well, and some of the issues that I've heard is that these are not even local people. You know, it's not so much caring for our own, it's the people that are coming up here from different areas and tapping our resources.
well, different areas are giving them bus tickets, and this is true, what's happening. They're getting bus tickets from different areas and ship them here.
Because
Because
we're
we
so
take better
generous.
care of them.
Yeah. It's hard on us then. All right, then in the packet, we have draft committee reports from the fire department on their business meeting and their officers' meeting in January. And policy discussion, we finally got into the meat of the meeting. Consider scheduling a strategic plan meeting. We have talked about a bunch of things about strategic planning, how we want to have some open houses and get some of our residents in here to give us some input. That's obviously very important. I don't know if you want to plan on having a couple work sessions to figure out what our basic agenda would be, if you want to look at the master plan, if you want to just start scheduling some open houses. I wanted to get your thoughts. I went through the community survey and found some interesting stuff, but I think there's some things that we need to talk about first before we start having an open house, so that at least the people that might come or give us some input, we would have a little bit of a foundation to present to them, say, this is what we've done, this is what we could do, what are you thinking, something like that. So I need some input as to what happens next. Looks like Dave's up first.
I thought the last time we talked about this, we were going to come up with a rough draft of a strategic plan before we actually went to the public with it. I gathered all the comments from all the board members and put them on that PowerPoint. There's some 41 goals on there that are different from one another. And the SWOT analysis has got everything entered that I've been given. I would think we'd have a work session to sit down and pare those down to a manageable number.
I was hoping
And
for you.
I'd be happy to send that file back out to everybody if you want it.
It's compiled, yeah.
It's got the master plan goals and objectives, and the rec plan goals and objectives are attached to the bottom of it. So if you want to refer back and forth to make sure everything's lining up with the master plan and the rec plan goals and objectives, it's right on the bottom of that presentation.
Okay.
So, and then if you want to use that at the work session as a base, we can just keep updating that, and we'll come up with something that you can make a presentation right off that if you want it.
That would be great. Do y'all want to get together next week, maybe? Does that,
I think what David's suggesting is the way to go. We look at what we've put together and what he's managed to get into a package. And then we reduce that to half a dozen issues that we think are important, and that becomes what we communicate as our thoughts. Then we decide how we want to communicate that. But I think a work session just to do that is a beginning. I don't think we should do anything else other than reduce that, what we've been working on.
Yeah, I would think we need to get those 41 goals down to
Yeah.
5 at best.
Yeah,
Sounds
5 or
good.
6.
okay,
Manageable amount.
And that becomes the board's
Mhm.
position.
yep. So what does next week look like, or the week after? We don't get a bye this month, so we have our regular board meeting in 2 weeks. I would have Tuesday afternoon open next week, or Wednesday,
That's the 25th or 26th.
correct, if that works for anybody.
26, you got Marquette County Township Association, also the Planning Commission meeting on it, 6:30 and 7.
Yeah, those are late, because
Also
we
Ash
kind of
Wednesday.
do like 1 o'clock or like 1 to 3.
I'm good for a 1 to 3 anytime from Monday through Friday.
Wow, okay. What's your work
Me too.
schedule, Randy? You too? Like 1 to 3?
What day?
Would Tuesday work then?
Tuesday, the 25th,
1 to 3?
1 to 3?
1 to 2.
Leave it at, starting at 1,
Yeah,
open-ended.
that's probably easier. So 1 o'clock. Usually like to make those motions.
Yeah, I'll move to schedule a strategic planning work session Tuesday, the 25th at 1 o'clock.
Or
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So if you want to zip those out, Dave. Excuse me.
You want to print a copy of that, so everybody's got one to look at before
They'll want to scribble
before
on it.
Tuesday? I will stick it in your mailbox by the end of the day tomorrow.
Good plan. The weekend to look at.
just the additional new ones, new items coming through.
No, I rearranged them all because there was a lot of repeats and,
Can I throw away the old one then?
yeah, you can throw one. Yours around there.
Okay.
It's even got the revision date on the top of the page so you don't get confused.
I like dates. All right, so Tuesday, 1 o'clock, the
26th.
25th,
Oh, Tuesday,
2:25.
25th.
25th.
Okay. 9B, consider Sugarloaf parking expansion, letter of support recommendation. At the planning meeting last week, this was brought up. And the recommendation was to go out and send a letter of support, and Planner McCarthy said, I think we better have the board do that. So that's why you're seeing this. They had told us a couple years ago that the state was gonna be increasing the size of the parking out there and how important it was. Dave, I don't know if you want to comment since you were at the meeting.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the commission reviewed recommendations from the Marquette County Advisory Committee that was tasked with increasing the safety in response to increased activity, associated Sugarloaf visitors, and increasing capacity of the parking area. Their plan was to add about 100 parking spaces and up to 4 bus parking areas. And then the committee recommended enhancements to the parking area, as well as adding turn lanes on County Road 550 to allow the logging trucks and stuff to bypass that traffic that's waiting to turn in. Part of what they want to do first is to increase the parking and then work on adding the turn lanes after that. This would be a Marquette County grant program. They're just looking for the township's support because it helps when you got a letter of support when you're going for a grant.
The only thing that I didn't see that was real clear, because of the additional parking being, it's two different sites, two different spots. And it looks like there's no clear way other than to go along the road to get from one spot to the other.
I thought they had a,
It talks about trails, but I don't know if that means to get around the corner, basically.
yeah, you got to remember the whole thing is a concept drawing. And the one is what we have currently, and the second page is what they want to add.
But it isn't added, it's in a different spot.
Yeah,
Across the street.
yeah.
But it looks like they have 2 crossings identified.
No, it's not across the street.
No, it should be next to it. There's a
It's-
rock
it is-
outcropping.
It is
in
closer to
between.
the city
Oh, okay.
from the existing parking lot.
Right. So they're gonna be walking across
That
along
must
the
be a
side of the
culvert
road.
then.
Well,
That's the only thing that's bothering me about this.
that sure beats hell out of crossing the road.
No, they've got, if you look on the first page, they show some walking trails to get from one parking area to the
That's
other
what I'm
one.
hoping, is it's
Yeah.
not just a trail.
That's what, when you look at I think it's the southwest corner of that existing parking lot, you'll see a couple trails there with some amenities stationed alongside of them. That's to get between both parking areas.
Okay.
Again, I mean, it's just a concept drawing, so I'm sure maybe the next one
We
will be a
all-
color.
Anyone has it that looked at it on the evening?
I don't have a problem with a letter, if it wants to come from the planning commission. Was Jason gonna write it, or were they expecting the board to?
Yeah, the discussion at the planning commission is that without the board's approval, you really couldn't write a letter recommending anything or supporting anything to an outside agency, so
So Jason's
therefore it's here.
pretty wordy. John?
I think it's long overdue, and I think it's a great improvement to a used recreation site. I think that both the planning commission recommendation and the staff recommendation should be honored. I'll move that the township board supports the proposed parking lot and safety improvements and directs the staff to draft a letter of support for any grant opportunities that Marquette County may seek.
I'll second that. I'll second that.
Okay.
Does that letter of support come out of the planning commission or out of the board?
Well, it says staff is what Jason's
behalf of
kind
the
of
board.
recommending, staff
Okay.
and with,
The recommendation was the board, so on behalf of the board, the letter would go.
All right.
But I don't want to, I read the report from the planning commission minutes, and I concur. They've done a fine job of supporting it.
this says that over 60,000 visitors hit that spot in 2019. That's pretty amazing. Every time I drive by there, it's busy. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, consider approval amendment to Stantec agreement. This falls to John, already mentioned to us.
What you have is probably one of the most awkward recommendations I've probably had to make in my career, in that the original agreement for what they were helping us with was the $1,500 in the original, not the $6,000, and now we're asking for a $6,000 addition. So here's why. First, you have a new superintendent of public works, you have a new staff planner, you have a new crew leader, and you have Brenda on our internal team who was just brought into the process. So the only consistent element we have at this stage in the game is Stantec. In addition to that, their original agreement was only for the wastewater aspect. We added the water aspect into it, and they've been doing that for us within the limits of the agreement they had, but they've used it up. The problem is when you have lift stations, pump stations, grinder stations, well fields, the way we want to track them from a, let's call it asset management perspective, documenting our maintenance activities, we want to document the activities on every element of those complicated structures. And the way Cartograph is set up, they have to do a bunch of customization to do that. And we need to make sure we get it right the first time so that when we go to start documenting what we're doing, the information makes sense and it helps us moving forward. So we didn't know, at least I didn't know coming in, that Cartograph didn't have a standard way of doing that. They have to create these custom asset groups for each one of those different elements. We want to make sure that Stantec is available because they know the system better than any of us that are currently on the team. And 40 hours is what they predict it will be. I'm hoping we don't have to come back to you and talk to you about this again unless there's an issue with what I'm proposing here.
Okay, Dave.
After this is all done, and this, it's like the asset management program from hell.
Yeah.
It's been ongoing forever, and I can appreciate the fact that you're the new guy. But after this is all done, who does the updates into the program? Who does the, I mean, they build you the program, and I assume that our people are going to do the data entry?
Correct.
And going to do the maintenance entries when they do maintenance on it. But are we going to have to periodically go in and have Stantec come back and do program updates?
No, not based on my understanding of it. The way that this is set up, they are helping us create the reporting tools to enter the data into the system. And then on the back end, creating the documentation tools. So the same thing that we're currently doing on paper, when we create a work order, we will be able to enter that data in electronically into a very similar format, and then it's kept in a database. On the back end then, we will be able to generate reports that we use to help update our asset management plan and CIP.
So once it's done, and they said, here, it's all yours, we do the data entry after that, and we pull the reports out after that. We're not continuing to send them stuff and have them update it for us.
I sure hope not. The goal is for us to be independent on this once it's set up. And we were meeting real hot and heavy almost multiple times a week for about a month. And then our Cartograph rep had to go out on the road to help one of his customers. He was actually here in the office last Friday morning. We have another conference call this Friday. I think we're going to get to the point where we're actually getting the information installed so that we can start using it. And we'll start using it as a test site first, and then once we're comfortable with, as a test site, we'll roll it out to the department. They will start getting the work orders electronically. Lenny will play a huge role in that, and that, you know, all these guys don't have laptops to manually enter the data, so they will fill out the information that Lenny has to enter, or we'll have Brenda do some of it. We're hopefully going to tackle it as a team.
Okay, that's it.
Ernie?
The software we're talking about, where is that gonna reside?
On the server,
Township server?
correct.
So as long as we're running on that software, on our server and that, as long as there are no changes to it, we don't have a problem. But they have to, updates to that, they're gonna have to come in and update that software then? Or can we?
We should be able to download any updates that are necessary. The data is accessible through the cloud. And it actually can be web-based, but all of it is permanently residing on our server.
I think there's a little confusion because we're saying updates on two different levels. One is a software update that you're talking about, I think. And I think Dave was talking about updating the information on the equipment, on the asset itself. So we don't have to, we're just going to be updating the database. But what about the software? Do we have to worry about those updates in the future?
Well, just like any other software, there will be updates. I mean, and you know,
We don't do that. This would be
no,
something. I
we,
think that's the.
we own the data and we'll manage the data, but as the software requires updates, just like any other program that we have, whether it be Cartograph or Microsoft or Windows 10 from Windows 7, whatever it is, our data will just be input into that updated program, but the data is ours, and we'll be monitoring the data and amending the data and utilizing the data.
So
on
if
our
there's
server.
if there's a software update that we don't feel we're capable of handling internally, we'll contact 906 and they'll be able to help us with it.
Does that make sense? So we'll be doing the database updates.
Okay. You mentioned something about cloud. Define what you're talking about on cloud.
Okay, so all of our data is available within our staff to view through ArcGIS Online, and that is interconnected to Cartograph, which you can access remotely through the web-based cloud. Basically, all that data can transfer back and forth between the two programs so that any information that we want permanently maintained in our GIS database can go back and forth, and any information that's purely asset management related that we don't want to bog down our GIS system, it stays in the Cartograph system.
So it's residing outside of our system somewhere, and we just go get it.
Backed up.
It's backed up on our server.
But you mentioned cloud, that's what gets me when someone mentions cloud, what they're really, where it's actually residing at.
Okay, yeah, it basically works like remote internet.
That's what I mean.
ArcGIS Online, it's not cloud-based, it's just, you can access it through the internet.
People talk about the cloud, all it is a big storage unit
That's all it is,
somewhere
is
else.
storage.
Right.
Somewhere
Yeah.
else, that's all it amounts
It's an
to.
off-site storage.
Yeah.
But locally, all of our data is backed up locally.
I should be clear, I'm not an IT guy, so I probably do use some of those words incorrectly.
You want to add something, Randy? Okay. All right, so this is basically, do you think this is it? Another 6,000?
The way you said that, it makes me feel even more awkward. Really, I don't like doing this, but I feel it's what we need to do to get across the finish line with all of the investment we've made to date. And I'm hoping, because it's T&M, we're only using an hour or two here or there, and we don't even have to use half of that. But until we get to that point where we can say, we are using this tool, or we're taking a really hard look at what went wrong here and we need to come up with something different, which I'm hoping we don't have that conversation, but those are really our options. We have to get this across the finish line, or everything we've invested in this to date will have been a waste, in my opinion.
So where do the algorithms that you were talking about between the water and the wastewater come into play with this? Do they?
That is Microsoft Excel spreadsheet based. And I don't know, when you see the tool that they have, you don't get to see, they have parts of the spreadsheet locked down that we
Oh, yeah.
can't. All we can see is what the result is from the data that's entered.
No, because the way I understood when you were talking about the algorithms before, that we kind of agreed that you'd want to have them the same on the water side as the wastewater side. Does this have anything to do with that, or is that a separate issue?
I
Separate
think
cost?
it's another tool that you use down the road
Okay.
to help you come up with those same types of situations.
I thought so, but I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't involved in this.
Yep. It's going to track those day-to-day activities that we do.
Randy?
I move to approve the addition of $6,000 to existing professional service agreement with Stan Tech to be used on a time and material basis as necessary to complete the implementation of the cartograph asset management tool, and approve the superintendent of public works to sign the amended agreement.
Good. Anything else? Yep, John supporting. Ernie?
Maybe I go back in time too long when I'm dealing with software vendors and that, time material. I've seen too many things happen in that past that. I just hope what you say is they can do it in less than 40 hours in that too. So.
My goal is to manage that, so in the end, we won't have used all that money. And I don't intend to just leave $1 in there either.
John, did you have something else, or was it just a support?
That's it, support.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comment before everybody falls asleep? Anything, Linda? That's fine. Thanks, John.
I'm Linda Winslow, 2502 Norwood Street, Marquette Township. So Lynn talked about having people understand their tax bills. So my recommendation would be at some point that we actually do an in-person in-service or education session to do that. I know that you suggested that we put it on the water bills or utility bills, some written information, but my experience is that people don't read that information and there is a lack of understanding, and so by providing an educational in-service for taxpayers to come, hear the information and then be able to ask questions would be much more valuable than just putting it as a written information. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any announcements? Anything anybody wants to share? Nope. Managers report.
You do have a printed report, and as Trustee LaRue mentioned, the Community Events Committee has been busy. They have slated the calendar for this coming season, 2020. The car show and cruise is going to be on Saturday, June the 20th, as it has been in the past in the parking lot at the Marquette Mall, Westwood Mall. Yeah, it's still called the Westwood Mall. Community Day at Lions Field is going to be Saturday, August the 1st, and we're going to have the same type of a setup as we've had with softball tournament, music all day long. The bands are in the process right now of being lined up. Most of them are already signed on. And then our traditional Christmas tree lighting will be on Tuesday, November 24th. All of those events are going to be family-friendly events. The music on the mall will be happening again on Thursday the 19th, which is coming up this week. So there will be at least one more in the month of March and possibly one in April. Same thing, third Thursday of the month, from 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock in the Westwood Mall. Ice rink, we still struggle with the ice rink. There is ice currently, but as the sun is coming up, the ice deteriorates quickly. So before you strap on your skates, take a look at the signage to see if the rink is open or closed, depending on what the weather conditions are. Couple of other items that are not on here. Your red book that we talked about at the last meeting is now being published. We do have them on order, so as soon as the new ones come in, we'll be distributing to the board member. Each of you will get your own copy. It has apparently been fairly significantly reviewed or revised since this last copy. So that will be coming. John mentioned the tractor. We are anticipating right now that right around St. Patrick's Day, the new loader, a wheeled loader, will be here. All of the other equipment has arrived and is being stored at Miller Bradford. And the Jeep you see out in the parking lot, Friday is the end of the bid period for that Jeep. It has a minimum bid of $500. So anybody who's interested can come take a look at it, but come close of business Friday, high bid will take it. That's it that I have at the moment.
Any questions for the manager? No? We're good? We want to review our motions, Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, first motion was consent agenda as presented, that was approved. Second motion was the regular agenda as presented, that was approved. Third motion was to schedule a strategic planning session on Tuesday, the 25th of February at 1 o'clock, and that was approved. Fourth motion was to approve a letter of support for the county for the Sugarloaf parking expansion. That was approved. And the fifth motion was to approve the amendment to the Stantec agreement, and that was approved.
Okay, thank you. So for right now, we will, for the next agenda on March 3rd, have a closed session to discuss Lost Creek, unless somebody else comes up with something else. Randy?
I had noted three other things that we'll be putting on the agenda. One is the water side of the asset management summary that Dave had talked about, and we're going to have that on there. An update on the ambulance, and then also the road maintenance recommended action from the roads committee.
Okay.
I'll be putting those on as separate items.
Any board member comment? Dave?
Yeah, I like Linda's idea on the service day.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to do that.
I think that would be very useful.
I'll talk to staff and see what they can come up with. Maybe we tie it into the strategic open houses or something too.
Good, that may be a good spot for
Because
it.
that way people won't have to worry about coming multiple times, but you can always come in and look at your tax bill. Don't feel like you can't. Call. I'm sure we can even email it or fax it or whatever, mail it to you. If you're not getting your tax bill because your mortgage takes everything all at one time, whoever you get your mortgage from. You don't see your tax bill, it's just paid.
Yeah, I just think it'd be a good idea to put it up on the screen and go over what all those things mean.
Sure. That would be great.
We'll have some people who are in the know,
Yeah, we'll check with staff, start with them. Because my commercial bill is way different than yours, like I said, it shows the 18 meals for school. I have to pay that, you guys don't.
everybody who rents, everyone who has a rental pays.
Mm-hmm, yeah, yeah, we need to educate them. Cool. Pete?
I know the county's trying to clear up your intersections, they're doing a pretty good job of it, but they're still high. And we don't have the aerials. Years ago, we put the little red ball on top of the area. We don't have that anymore. I've seen quite a few close calls because they're creeping out. And the bad was on the corner of Ontario and Huron because there's no place to put the snow, but they've been pushing it back. That's a bad one, one of the bad ones on the Trowbridge Park area. But just be careful because some people aren't looking. They're not cleaning their car off. So if we get a snow, again, we will be getting more. take the time to wipe your windows off and stuff like that, because it just drives you nuts. But be careful the intersection, because the banks are high.
It's also illegal if you're driving with your windows not cleared off, they can't ticket you.
Yeah.
Be off your whole vehicle. Yes, whoever was first. Ernie?
I just wanted to ask Pete, we talk about the community days and stuff in the softball tournaments. I don't know anything about pickleball or how well it's received in the township, but why not have a pickleball tournament along with the softball tournament, if there's
They can.
people that are out there that want to do that?
I'm gonna talk to my nephew, who's very enthusiastic with pickleball, and he's pretty good at it, so, I've seen him today, but I forgot to mention it to him. But I wanna ask him if they would be interested, and then I was gonna bring it to the events committee, you know.
I think that would be a great thing to have for both playing and for viewing.
Right, and bring more people to the event.
Correct.
Where would you do it?
Huh? That's your problem.
Cherry Street, maybe? Summit Street? The ice rink's not available because the inflatables are on the ice rink.
Well, we don't have to have inflatables there, they can just put them anywhere, no,
Tennis
I don't
courts.
know, it's just one thing I.
Weren't they doing them on the tennis courts last year?
Yeah.
And music
Worked
is
out
set
good,
up.
too.
Music is set up on the tennis courts.
Right, the tennis court's all laid out already, but,
Well, and if you need a referee, John volunteered too.
all right.
As long as he gets a referee's shirt to wear.
Black
yeah,
stripes.
black
You
stripes.
might be able to get Clausen's to,
I would
get
propose
Clausen to
that,
sponsor it.
Watch it, John.
I would propose that Pete wear his uniform to the meeting to spur up the attendance.
There you go. Yes, Randy.
And move to adjourn.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
8:00.